Nice.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you may be joining, it is all good today because today is the last day of the Rise Pico World Summit. And, like everything that's good, you begin to miss it even before it's over. And so we're feeling really good from the morning when we had the opening thematic plenary. And I would like to welcome you to this last session of the Beyond series. Beyond why? Because it pushes us all to think deeper, to really reflect on aspects that we take for granted. And this today's session is about thinking beyond me to ours. As you saw in the video on the Rise values just now, we really, really need to do that. And especially in today's day and age of climate action and artificial intelligence, there are all kinds of issues that are threatening the very fabric of humanity. And that is why this session is so aptly called, Whose Planet Is It Anyway? Something to think about, right? And as the saying goes, we have borrowed this planet from future generations. We are not just handing it over. And because of that, we need to explore a new kind of ownership. We are very used to being asked, what is in it for me? Isn't it? We do that all the time. If it is not relevant to me, it's not of interest to me. But when we start having a systems ownership mindset, we begin to realize that when we contribute to the greater good, the system will benefit. The hours will benefit. But with that benefit, there will be something for me in it as well. And that's the difference between systems ownership and self-ownership. And I hope to explore this much, much more further and deeper with a wonderful set of thought leaders who are joining me this morning, who have had a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, but above all, the wealth of wisdom and a wealth of ownership, the systems variety, to share it with all of us and have shown it and demonstrated it in their work, decades of work in most of their cases. And so with that, it is my pleasure to introduce and invite Jean DeCuna, the ex-senior global advisor, international migration, decent work, and entrepreneurship for UN Women, a really force that in the Middle East, especially with the kind of work and change that she has made and brought about. So to set the context for this roundtable, Jean, may I please hand this over to you?
Thanks very much, Karan, for those insightful remarks. And thank you for inviting me to kickstart this session. Well, I'd like to start with looking at the concepts of system and ownership in relation to the environment and ecology, our ecosystems. I believe that the planetary crisis that we are in today is based on a system that is premised on a very, very flawed set of assumptions, so to speak, and built on a flawed set of assumptions. It is really anchored in unsustainable models of development that are rooted in profit, economic growth without equity, the desire for immediate economic gain and gratification, and this is prioritized over an equitable ownership, distribution, consumption of assets, resources, benefits, over environmental sustainability, over health and well being. And this leads, as all of us know, to multiple forms of inequality, deprivation, to unsustainable production, consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, global warming, ecological and climate crises, and more vulnerability. And this whole circuit and vicious cycle of vulnerability, crisis, vulnerability continues because we don't take timely action. And now bolstering this entire system are also an unsustainable set of values. The whole notion of human dominion or domination of the earth, the lack of ecological stewardship, entitlement, avarice, greed, looking at nature as an asset, a financial resource, so to speak, that is consumed inexorably on a finite planet, wastage, and so on and so forth. And this really goes against the very grain of sustainable ecosystems and sustainable development, because, like it or not, we human beings are, in a deep, or are supposed to be, in a deep communion and interrelationship with nature. We are part of nature. We are of nature. We are from nature. We are with nature. We were made of dust, and unto dust we shall return. And therefore, when this balance between human beings, between society and nature is disrupted, you have this huge, complex social and environmental crisis, which decimates not just the earth, but it also decimates human beings, particularly the most vulnerable. And therefore, we must move from entitlement to stewardship. A few more points about the systems approach. Everything's interconnected. An environment is a multidisciplinary subject which cuts across policy fields. So, what we do need when addressing the environment, addressing our ecosystems, is not a siloed approach, but multi-sectoral, intersectoral, inter-stakeholder collaboration, not just between related government departments, but government and various segments of civil society, be it gender equality advocates, climate activists, disaster specialists, water and sanitation specialists, humanitarian actors, and so on, for policy coherence and for amplified impact. The third point I want to make about a systems approach is that we live in systems. We are impacted by socioeconomic systems and we make a dent on them. And while looking at climate impacts on people, I think there is great need to look at how these systems impact us on the basis of inequalities based on age, race, ethnicity, sex, gender, geographical location, so that we glean the priorities of different categories of the population and we tailor our responses to those differentiated priorities so as to get overall sustainable development and empower the community or communities as a whole. And when talking about these interventions or these responses, I'm tempted to say that when I was in UN Women and, in my last job, we were looking at cross policy, synergizing between policies. For example, the priorities of diverse categories of women, I'm giving a gender example, need to be mainstreamed when we're talking about climate, into climate policies, but also migration policies when we are talking about migrant women. So migration policies need to, for example, have pre-departure training programs which also dwell on climate hazards in countries that they are going to. Climate policies need to ensure that migrant women are also part of that cohort of women they train on agroecological practices. The other thing I want to say about systems is systems integration vertically. So macro, meso, and micro policies interventions have an impact on one another, and we need to go upstream as well. If you have good practices at the community level, we need to glean these good practices, and we need to show how they can impact, institutions, policies, so that there is vertical spread, there's horizontal spread, expansion, and upscale. And a final word about ownership. I think the notion of ownership has to focus on us owning responsibility towards the environment to protect, to rejuvenate, to restore the environment. So, ecological stewardship, responsibility to resources, which is part of the environment, responsibility to other people. So, conversion of personal power into collective protection, collective empowerment, collective good, protection of our common home, so to speak. And in conclusion, I want to say, we have the data, we have the science, we have the technology, we have the finances if we reprioritize them. We have the technical know-how, we have the policy expertise, we know the strategies that need to be implemented to save the planet. But what we lack is the moral compass. We lack ethical integrity, we lack moral integrity, and this diminishes political will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. As passionate as ever, does not matter where and when and how. You of course bring out the points that we really need to think about. Thank you for, of course, reinforcing today is World Environment Day, which is exactly why we decided, even though it was such a short time frame, we exactly decided to do the Rice Peak World Summit to coincide with that, because I thought it was beautiful that ownership came on the day of World Environment Day, and we really really do need to think about that, and of course the whole arc of ownership. A lot of what you say relates to the whole theme and the structure of the Rise Pico World Summit. The Rise values: responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and ecosystem friendly, and of course the whole Pico model, which is partnership, stewardship, entrepreneurship, which is innovation. Then citizenship is about the collective, and then of course ownership today. So thank you so much for setting the stage and setting the context. I'm now going to invite my other experts to join me on this co-travelers to kind of join me and come on board. Please, if we could bring them together. Dr. Tathagat Verma, who's the founder of Cognitive Chasm; Daisy Varun, an independent L&D consultant and Antara Leadership Advisory; Neena Jain, the Secretary General of United Schools Organization of India; Anupama Kapoor, who's a gender and inclusion specialist, and I'm sure you, Jean, you and she are going to be really up in arms with all of us. And of course, Ashish Mehta, who is an impact entrepreneur and advisor. So as you can see, we have a very diverse set of people over here who are going to be talking from different lens, and that's exactly what we look for when we put this table together. As Cheryl Kaiser, who is the convener of the Uncommon Table, and she was last night with us on the Future Ready, Future Blind Roundtable, she famously coined this term Uncommon Table. And I think that's the idea, right? How do you bring diverse stakeholders to come together to discuss any problem? Because without that, you're really not going to be able to get different views to really enhance the conversation and then come out with outcomes that can be actually workable and solutions. So thank you all very much for giving of your time generously and being over here, and very soon generously give of your knowledge and wisdom as well. So I'm going to start with Dr. Tathagat Verma. Who almost 30 years ago, Tathagat, went to the Antarctica. Okay, I'm sure not too many people can make that claim in their life, right? So that's the extent to which he is going to share his knowledge and experience with us, and why this, whose planet is it anyway, is a very key question for us to answer and think about, because there's so much that's going on that we don't even know about, which is so invisible and yet has life-threatening effect on all of us. And so we better start knowing about them. So Tathagat, over to you.
Thank you, Karon, and good morning, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Jean, for setting such a beautiful context. I love the whole framing, or rather reframing, that you did with "We Are the Nature," and I think it almost reminds me of that old thing, which is like we always blame traffic and say I wasn't stuck in the traffic, but we don't realize that we are the traffic. I think that's the kind of a thing. We are the nature, we are the planet, and we cannot disassociate ourselves from saying, hey, they are doing it. It is us who are doing it. So I really love that reframing. Coming to my own story here, As you said, Karen, I was lucky. I was the youngest Indian scientist to actually spend 16 months in Antarctica. I was part of the Indian expedition, the 13th Indian expedition to Antarctica back in 93, and I came back in 95. So that's my small claim to fame. Of course, the danger of telling something like that is that you end up telling your age, but that's okay. I'll go on the risk of doing that. But that is something which actually living there for 16 months opened my eyes to something that we don't get to see so often, which is like you are sitting at a place, the most pristine place on earth, which is untouched by human hands. 90% of the potable water is stored over there. And guess what? 85 was the time when the ozone hole was discovered over Antarctica. Was anybody going with CFCs in Antarctica? And was anybody spoiling the ozone layer in Antarctica? Nobody was doing that. And yet, poor Antarctica was actually a victim that everyone else who was using the chlorofluorocarbons, if you remember during the decade of 80s and 90s, because of that, the whole ozone hole was kind of manifesting itself above Antarctica when it was discovered in 85. And thanks to the Montreal Protocol, which probably is one of the most successful global collaboration in eliminating CFCs, we have seen that it is on the path towards healing. It is a self-healing process. I believe it will take up to 2050 for it to restore, I think, about 50% of 1980 levels or something like that. So nature claims itself. I firmly believe in that. And nature will self-heal itself if only human beings stay away from it. So I think that was a big learning for me personally, having been there and being part of the team, being part of the people. We had Germans, we had Russians, we had Norwegians coming there, and everybody was worried back in the days that, hey, Antarctica for us is really going to be like a what should I say? It's a bellwether. If something goes wrong there, that means something is dramatically wrong in rest of the planet. So I think that to me was a great learning for it. And in the last 15 years, as a student of complexity science, one of the things that I have learned, which I think to me is the genesis of the problem. The problem is most of us don't see that in the same way that some of us see, is because we don't understand the causality of some of these events. And I just want to quote here Lawrence, who was the MIT scientist back in 60s when he saw that, and when he provocatively gave this talk, can the flaps of a butterfly in Amazon bring a tornado in Texas, right? And that to me is really the whole crux of the whole situation, because we are doing a small little thing there and we don't realize that my small little action is going to cascade off something big in 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 20 years from now, that's going to probably engulf half of the planet there. So it is not, it's very convenient for me to shut off my eyes and say, hey, I'm only doing this for myself. Why is it really causing a trouble to you? Because it's not hurting anyone. I think everyone needs to inculcate a systems mindset and understand that the cause and effect are never disassociated. They may be separated in time and space, which is what we saw with the ozone hole, right? They were separated in time and they were separated in space because nobody was really going the CFCs in Antarctica. But that's exactly how the planet behaves. We should be lucky that there are places on this planet which actually afford us the privilege of observing, as like we call it in the process world, we call some of them as a leading metric and a lagging metric. In some sense, those bellwethers are the leading metrics. If we don't pay heed to them, we should be prepared for a 10x, a 100x, a million x kind of a thing in rest of the planet. So I will end here, Karen, with basically tying these things and saying that I think we all need to understand, in my view, and inculcate a systems thinking and a complexity systems mindset, which allow us to recognize that the causality may not be what meets the eye, but there is much more to it. And if there is no causality present, it does not mean the absence of evidence is not an evidence of absence, but we should really be going deeper and trying to understand what could be happening here, or we may be inadvertently creating some problems for the adjoining ones. So I would go to the point of saying, as you said, Jean, we have not only borrowed this planet from the future generation, I even would like to add to that that we have borrowed this planet from our neighbors, from the people who live across the street, from the people who live across the river, and we are all in it together because that's the only planet we have. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tathagat. I think both your experience in Antarctica and also your work with complexity science. Saying that he's a student of complexity is him being modest, as you can imagine. And I'm really lucky to be able to learn from him constantly on what complexity really is, and we have our bouts on those as well, which is also what complexity should be about, right? Diversity. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Tathagat, what I really loved is what you just said, right? The flap of a butterfly in the Amazon can create a tornado in the US. We just don't get that. Right? We just don't accept that. And again, the word that you said, right? Just because you don't know about the evidence doesn't mean the evidence is absent, right? It is there. You need to go and take the trouble to find it out, to understand what is happening. And if you don't, then you're only digging your own grave, literally, very, very literally, right? And so, and then the last thing that you said, we borrowed the future. So I think I'm going to move to Nina, because Nina works with children. And I must say something over here. The USO, the United School Organization, is something that is so close to my heart, because and it's something that her parents started, actually, right? And I remember, I don't know how many of you remember, but when I was in school, okay, it used to be my favorite thing, because it used to be about, it was part about the United Nations and how to learn about them and everything that you would do in extracurricular, beyond. So today there's a lot of extracurricular stuff that happens, but when we were in school, and so don't ask me how old I am now, but when we were in school, there was nothing else, right? It was only USO work that would kind of give us that opportunity to do something out of it. And so I still treasure my certificate, and they are celebrating their 75th anniversary, in fact, right now this year. And as a part of that, I really took out my certificate to show so proudly how I've still saved it. So Nina, that's enough from me. Over to you to tell us more about how you are protecting our planet and making sure that our current generation and of course the future generations are protected. Over to you.
So first of all, good morning, everyone. I'm truly humbled to be sharing this stage with all of you. And thank you to Caron and her team as well for all of these past few days. I'm sure they were busy, but they are very impactful. Huge fan of the work that you do, Caron. You do know that. And coming up to this particular topic, which is on system thinking, must say that, Jean and Dr. Verma completely second everything that you have said. So whereas I think most of the context for you is, in the adult format, we deal with schools on a national level, as Caron just pointed out. And it is similar. It is very, very similar in schools as well. So from our end, what we try to do is, build that extracurricular mindset so that systems thinking can be inculcated in young children earlier on. And since students, young children, I also take a lot of inspiration from my children, we are hoping that every little action that every child takes can in fact encourage their parents to change their mindset. Because at the end of the day, it's just perspective and mindset. Most traditional, as you all know, most educational and institutions traditionally only focus on academic outcomes. They have to score well, and that is about it. And so this is something that USO over the past 75 years has been trying to change, not change, but sort of add in. We have consistently over the past 75 years created platforms where the schools, including the teachers and the students, the parents, in a collaboration, several instances with the government bodies, they all come together and they have a broader perspective and not just a tunnel vision on one particular activity or one particular purpose that they wish to do. Through all of our campaigns or competitions, we just don't want students to participate or schools to participate because it's a checkbox. No, we want that the young students and the teachers as a result of that, and the parents who will be also on it, but to all understand that we have a certain stake in our society, in the challenges that our society faces. And it is up to us to come up with the solutions. So I know that the key thing here is whose planet is it, and we borrowed it, and I agree with all of those. But I think also one other parallel thought process could be, we should never have stopped believing that it was never ours, because the moment we feel that it is our planet, we will make that change. Now we have the mindset of students or children thinking that this is not my problem, it's not for me to fix. As Dr. Verma, you just mentioned, we are sitting in the traffic, but we forget that we are the traffic. Just like that, students come up with the mindset, it's not my problem to fix. But you see, the moment a child thinks that, we've already stepped outside the system's thinking circle, if I may call it that. I think it's more important to think about what can we do about it? What is it that I can contribute to it? It's very easy to identify problems. That's the reason why we come up with all of these programs, so that we can think of it in a global context. Jean just mentioned we are all interconnected, and I strongly believe that, whether it's a butterfly, somewhere else, or it's a forest fire in California or anywhere else, we are connected. But our tunnel vision doesn't help us to connect the dots. So we are very, very focused on just the problem and think that it is very far away. It's not my issue at all. So their problem needs to, perhaps in school students, what we are trying to attempt to do is to change it, to change their language and to change their thinking into our challenge, our global collective challenge. It is not just their school, but it is our community. And it's not just, the environment, but it is actually, our planet, going back to the entire Earth, the planet that we borrowed from our children. Now, I'll give you an example. Today is World Environment Day as well. And if we were to call in a student and ask them to plant a tree, as a World Environment Day activity, that's just an activity. The child comes in, plants the tree. Now, assuming that the school runs a campaign around it and says we are going to have a tree plantation drive, or, calls in a particular standard of students, they all plant trees. Now, that's a campaign or a program that the school has conducted. But the responsibility doesn't end there. You see, the students, the teachers, the parents, the community, when we all, take ownership, sort of become custodians. And the reason why I'm saying that is I just saw an ad of Custodians of the Galaxy, or some movie that's coming out like that. So that's the word that's in my mind. But custodians of the environment, of the ecosystem. That's when I think, that mindset that needs to be changed. And that is what systems thinking, I would think, is all about. And much of our work that we are trying to do is exactly to create those type of connections.
Yeah, it's true. Well, the word that Jean used was stewardship. And it's the word we use for partners as well, where we say that they are stewards of, resources. Because, and again, I'm often accused of semantics, that, when you use words, because I truly believe the nuanced use of words really help you to go deeper and understand where is the difference. And, for stewardship, it's really about guiding the use of that resources. It's not just about giving it over, right? And so being a custodian is very, very important as well. And this could be another way to look at it as well. So thank you for sharing that word with us, Neena, because it is true. We need to look at how we are taking ownership of it. And that's why we have the whole concept of co-ownership, because ownership can't be only about yourself, right? Ownership, when you talk of ownership, it's just about me. But when you talk of co-ownership, we realize that it is me and everybody else as well. And so that, slight difference, I guess, makes all the difference, I would say, right? So I think since you're talking about children and capacity building of the youth, I'm going to move to Daisy Varun, who is involved in so much of capacity building of adult learners, though she's also involved with youth. But I'm going to focus more on the adult learner part, especially in the workplace, how do we really understand ourselves from the entire environment in which we are? Do we even realize that in the workplace also, do we even realize that both the environment in its physical terms and the environment in its natural term has an effect on employee, kind of performance and employees themselves? What would you like to add on that?
I honestly have never tried to look at it from a particular lens of how it's impacting an employee, but the way I look at it is, and what we all agree is that we are a part of this entire system. And when Dr. Verma said that nature heals itself as long as human beings stay away from it, I couldn't help but laugh, because how do you put human beings out of nature and then expect both to heal themselves? So I have that outlook towards the whole thing. And when it comes to systems thinking, I think there are two ways to look at it. One is that there is a system and there are different parts of it, and they are working absolutely in alignment, in tandem with each other, and they are giving us what we want, right? The other way to look at it is that there's a lot of good stuff happening in silos everywhere. How do you bring that together and create a system that will work and that can be scaled up, right? So it's not that people are not taking responsibility. There are a million examples that all of us put together can quote. I can quote some. There is a gentleman who has famously been on a TV series by Amir Khan, Satyamev Jayate. There is a gentleman called Srinivas. And if you ever are curious about it, go look at watch that episode where he talks about waste management. That's such a beautiful example of systems thinking. I use it in all of my interactions in my, adult learning groups. Similarly, there is this couple who has and there are many. I'm talking about one couple who has started harvesting water hyacinth for paper making. Now, water hyacinth is supposed to be an invasive weed. We see it thrown all around. We see it strewn all around the common streams and ponds and everywhere. But nobody ever knew or thought or figured out how to utilize it. But 1 kg of water hyacinth gives you 34 A4 sheets. Now you do the maths and see how many forests would you save if you make water hyacinth a crop instead of a weed. Because as a crop, you will cyclically, seasonally harvest it and process it into paper. So how much of such good stuff is happening around in silos? My outlook most of the times is to bring these together and talk about these in adult groups and help them understand and see where can they connect the dots in their communities, in their environment. Can you write to the government, like Jean said, that the moral compass, the ethical compass, the political will? How does the political will happen? Somebody has to push it, and who will push it? Because we have a weak moral compass, and especially when it comes to politicians, it's a whole new debate altogether. Who takes that ownership and says that I want this happening in my community? I have 5 water bodies in my community which are infested with hyacinth. Now, the system that is working somewhere else, how can I push my local governance to bring that system and install it here? My house is situated between 2 sabzi mandis and a meat mandi. Okay, so how does the Srinivas system of waste management from Chennai, how can that be brought into Ghaziabad is what my focus is. So all of my understanding about systems thinking is that, systems are working. We can't keep saying that things don't work. We just need to see where is it working and how do I bring it and make it work in this environment where I am in. And that's where I think the community part or the ownership part of it comes into picture. How do you mobilize your community? How do you mobilize the powers that be in your environment, in your city? If it is working, if Indore can go trash free in 2 years, why can't Delhi and Ghaziabad become trash free? Why can't Mumbai become trash free? Because the system has worked in a city. We have awarded that city over and over to be the cleanest. I think for the last 4 or 5 years, we are awarding Indore to be the cleanest city in India. Why can't that system be replicated is the question that I ask people. And I push my, my reach is limited. I can only write to my local corporator, or I can only write to the local offices in my city. And I do that because my job is to tell them that, see, this exists, please buy this for me. If you are my like Nina used the word custodian, if these administrators are the custodians, I go further to that. I say they are the parents to the city.
Yeah.
They take all the decisions for the city. City is the family, and
Wow.
these people sitting in authority are the parents. And as a child, I'm going to ask my parents to give me what I need. And
Yeah.
I'm going to really, become that ziddi bacha who will say, no, this is working. This is a new toy in the town and I need it. So I do a lot of this writing in the background. So this is not related with my official work that I do with the corporates, but as an individual, as a responsible individual, I do write these. Still, I do write these letters, Seva me, Mananiye, and I literally address them to the respective offices. So I don't know how much it mobilizes, but when I go back to bed, I know that I have done something today which um, eventually will make a difference. So even if
Absolutely.
one of the systems which I have observed is working somewhere else, even if one of them comes to my city, I know my city is going to be better.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Really, really. I think everybody loved that our government or those in kind of authority and decision making are actually the parents, and we are the children. So that sounds so beautiful. You've actually given me two opportunities to talk about something that is very close to my heart. One is we are actually working with the MP government, and we're actually working on a curriculum on circular economy. So hopefully we're doing a little bit towards replicating what is happening over there so that it is available to a larger group. So thank you for sharing that. And we had no idea I had no idea that she would be saying this. As I keep saying, when you have the uncommon table or when you have this kind of an organic conversation, it's amazing how such beautiful things come up, which you did not anticipate, rather than going with a prepared set of questions. So thank you so much, Daisy, for sharing those thoughts. I think they resonated a lot going by the reaction from others. The
Thank
second
you.
thing I want to kind of respond to is when you say that, systems thinking and systems are working. Yes, they are working, but why and where? And this is where, Tathagat and me kind of butt heads on complexity. My thought about complexity, okay, in the relations of systems thinking is very simple, that on paper, systems thinking has solved every problem you can possibly think about. Okay, this is the lever that needs to be done. This is what needs to be done. What needs to be done is very clear. We all know what needs to be done to solve the problem and how the ecosystem should really be working, or what the system really requires to be done, right? The problem is, and this is where I believe the complexity is who's going to do it? Humans are so complex. The complexity of a system is really not so much in the system itself as much as it is in the people who are in that system. They bring in the complexity, they enhance that complexity. And so if we can understand the complexity of human behavior and change that, or not change but nudge that, or anticipate that or work with that, I think the complexity in all our systems would come down drastically, right? I'm not trying to be reductionist about this, Tathagat, so please forgive me, okay, before we get into another conversation. But really, this is what I believe, and that's why systems ownership is what I focus on. When I talk about complexity, it is for me the systems ownership piece, which is the most complex part of systems thinking. And if we can get that, hopefully a little more aligned, we would get that. But this is not the time for me to go for more deeper in that. And I'm going to move to Ashish, because when we speak about nature and systems, I think Ashish has been working and working and working on this and breaking his head to say, listen to me, So Ashish, this is your chance. Tell us more about it.
Thanks, Karen. And it's always very interesting when you collect together a panel like this. I start with thoughts which are like, okay, this is what I'm going to be talking about. And now I'm like, okay, there's lots of thoughts popping in my head. How am I going to prevent myself from going off tangents? So
Complexity. That is what this
if
is.
I'm rambling, shut me up. Dr. Tathagat just reminded me of grad school and complex systems and learning all that chaos theory. And I was also remembering another incident where one of the co-travelers we have in this journey on socio-ecological transformation, every time we used to walk into a room, and not this kind of room, the other kind of rooms that we tend to have to go to, we would, before going into the room, we'd hold him and say, please don't say complex, and please don't say systems. So when Daisy said that, the systems are already in place, I really appreciated that statement, because humans have created these systems that are in place. If we have to get to new systems, that's also humans have to get to those newer systems, whatever form or structure they might take. So I think I appreciated that. But let me come back to like the perspective that we are taking, or like I would say personalize it more, and how I'm taking, as you said, my role is more as an entrepreneur, as an advisor within the impact space, right? And we do work across those two sort of domains. The one thing I do want to talk about a little bit, not so much in the term of co-ownership, but in community involvement. And what we have realized, and we've somewhat successfully managed to bring to the table, is the concept that we're just talking about saying it's people power. And what I mean by that is that we sit in these rooms, a lot of us, and then in some form or the other, we are expecting the rest of the mainstream to become active participants without creating mechanisms, tools, services, solutions for that group of people. And if I be honest, hand to heart, today the model is really guilting and shaming people to do the right thing. And no mainstream movement, I mean, we're all students of history in some form or the other, no mainstream movement happens without full stream participation of everybody in that, right? So one thing that and that's the idea of this concept of people power, is that we in these domains, in the impact domain, in the sustainability, in whatever, left side, right side, however you want to define it, have to create products, tools, and services to be able to bring mainstream participation. And that's one thing, that the reason I said we have done it a little successfully in one small vertical is where we now get the confidence that, hey, this can happen in other places also. So while we have done it and I have to give some example on this, because we found that when we are giving financial returns, again, as an entrepreneur, I'm going to talk very specifically about this market model, right? When we're giving financial returns to, let's say, our investing partners coming on board, as when we start giving measurable environmental returns, the flip that happens in their head is immense, and you can see it. They no longer remain investors, they become partners along the way. And I use the word specifically partners, I use the word really around the PICO model, Karen. That's why I really love your framing of it. And they become owners along the journey. And what we see is that then this group of mainstream, let's say, I'm still saying mainstream because this is what starts as friends and family, then starts expanding widely, right? And what we have done now with that is, on the advisory side, is said, okay, how can other enterprises also sort of leverage these models, right? Today's model, if you're a small enterprise, doesn't matter you're non-profit or for-profit, you're working in the social or ecological domain, there are two ways you go about really connecting and creating more impact in terms of your resource management. One, you go to grant providers, the traditional model grant providers. Two, you go to accelerator incubator models if you're a for-profit, and then you look for something which gives you a financial intake, and you act on it. I think Jean used the word, I think Nina used the word around ownership and custodianship. And those models are so, for lack of a better word, I'd say antiquated. Their version of how to look at ownership is still hinged not on impact, they're still hinged on who brings in the larger set of capital or the larger set of resources, without taking, again, with fear, I would say, systems approach to it, right? But the founders in these organizations started them with a systems thinking approach in their version of the world. Again, like what Daisy said, right? Within my own version of the system, I'm looking at that problem solving. And what we are now starting to push or encourage is that rather than find your champions in a large grant provider or in a large venture capital or accelerator. Go interact with the people around you. Start with your friends and family network, expand that, and they again become co-owners along the journey. And we are living proof of that. They become co-owners. It you know we talk about mainstreaming and democratizing. We need to do that mainstreaming and democratizing. I think it just comes back to that piece of it. And the last thing I would say, again, Karen, you kind of mentioned this, is I think that's also the personal transformation piece. We did say, Daisy also talked about, social ecological transformation cannot happen without personal transformations. If I do personalize it, I'm in Mumbai, I take public transport. It takes me 1.5, 2 hours from where I am, change 3 trains and get to, let's say, where I need to go, my normal regular commute. um, it took me, after decades of driving a car solo, it took me a really long time to make that switch. I mean, I literally, every April in Mumbai when it gets hot, I'm like, I can't take the trains anymore. Now I don't have to think like that. Now I think in terms of trains, right? So it's a personal transformation piece. I know I'm personalizing it, but I'm just saying we all have to do that. And systems transformation, ownership don't happen without the personal transformation piece. And that goes back to, it is incumbent upon us to leverage it. I think we're missing the boat here on leveraging people power into our systems. And I think we need to get away, like I said, from the guilting and shaming of the mainstream. We need to provide, it's almost like you're selling soap, right? Products, tools, services for easy access. And the mainstream is waiting there to participate. Let's take a bottom up approach, not a top down approach. That's slightly where I differ with Daisy on saying, I think we're all, we don't need to wait for governments, administrations, and all, and we need to start making bottom up changes, and they'll automatically breed success.
Thank you so much, Ashish. I think, you gave me two other things to talk about. One is that the structures, right? Because there is, and as Daisy also said, there is so much of good happening. How do you make it happen so that they can come together? And we'll talk a little more towards the end of this session on how we are doing it through the Pico World Tech platform, because that's precisely what we are trying to achieve. Hopefully, is really what the game changer is all about. Number two is, you spoke about identities, like, depending on government, etc. And again, the Pico model is exactly that. Beyond the legal identity, what are you prepared to do, right? Because what happens with legal identities is that there's an expectation. Oh, the government should do this, industry should do this, civil society should do this, academia should do this, right? So we already attach a certain amount of expectation from each kind of identity that exists. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't do what they're supposed to do. Well, we don't do what we are supposed to do. Let's be honest. Like, I should be losing a lot more weight and taking a lot more care of my health. And I know it, right, for a fact. But do I do it every day? No. So being honest, being practical, being human, right, is something we need to be all aware of. And because of that, we have to leave it at something as simple as saying, what are you ready to do? What are you ready to do? The most basic, simplest one act also, if you're willing to do, that's good enough to begin with. And if you can create, and that's what we have done, we have created that arc where you can just do a one-time good deed is good enough. Yeah. Start with that. Just start with that. So we call it like, you come in as a participant, partner, expert, but go out as a contributor, and you can go to there is the go to exchange where you can post it and just put what you want to do one time. That should be the beginning point. So for me, I look at it that way, that beyond legal identities, what are you prepared to do, at the very minimum, and get started with that. So that's the second piece I want to talk about. And third is when we talk of systems thinking. And yes, you beautifully connected the personal transformation with the ecological transformation in the title of our topic, right? From me to ours is about the personal. And of course, whose planet is it anyway is about the ecological. So thank you for connecting that as well. Another part of systems thinking is feedback loops, right? Going back, right? And I think that's exactly what I'm going to do now when I bring Anupama in here, because Jean started with the whole gender lens and UN women. And I think Anupama is so passionate about women and the gender lens. There are times when we chat and she'll say something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. And I am passionate about women issues. So can you imagine that, right? And so I think that specialization, and she is a specialist, right? She very humbly says she's a practitioner, just like Taragat says he's a student. Well, sometimes you should not be immodest. You should come out there and say it. And I think, Anupama, I would love to hear from you, not just the gender lens, but how it intersects with so many other things that you do and what you do. So please, over to you.
Thanks, Karen. As Ashish said, everybody's already spoken about everything, and now that's the that's the challenge of being, I think, the last speaker. So this is an
No, we have a
accomplished.
lot more to go. Don't worry. You are not
Okay.
the last speaker. We are just going around right now through our feedback loops, and there's a lot more to go. So go
All
ahead,
right.
please. And after this,
Yeah.
of course, anybody can come in at any time. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Right. So, this is an accomplished room. All of you folks have done and are doing tremendous work on your own. But I also feel, and please take this very positively, and this includes me because I'm in the same room, that we are an echo chamber. We are, as Ashish said, the challenge is the mainstreaming of this, right? So, and again, I'm trying to stop myself from going on a tangent here. But say for example, if you're in Mumbai and you are, you have people who are planning roads, you have politicians, you have engineers, you have, everything going on, and you have contractors and tenders, but still we have bad roads, but still we have, flooding situations. So it's not that each one of these pieces didn't do their part. I think it's more also about what are the gaps between these pieces. And I think filling that and sort of zooming out from that is also one example of maybe the success of a system or systems thinking. From another perspective, if I work in the gender space, I work in the climate space, I work in care economy, and there's so much. Ashish, you spoke about personal transformation, public transport. I must tell you that as a youngster, I used to take the public transport, and this was back in Delhi. I was growing up, I was going to college. When you'd miss your school bus, went to school in the public transport. And I just had one wish, that the day I'm able to make enough money, the day I have the bank balance, I will get my own car, because I hated the public transport. And I hated it with a vengeance because of the sexual harassment that went by. So to convince somebody like me to take a public transport would be a big job. Yeah, because I've suffered a lot at its hands. So I hear you, but what I'm also trying to say is that there are so many other variables that work, right? We could all also, COVID started this whole trend of online shopping, which some of us are still struggling to get out of. But that has led to increased traffic, increased pollution, increased packaging materials and waste, right? That has also led to lift problems in my building because we have too much of, so this is all very complex in Karen's and Tathagat's terms. But I'll also take you back to an example of last year. So I do, as I said, a lot of capacity building work around gender and inclusion, and also mainstreaming gender. So last year I was working with entrepreneurs. These are MSMEs in Surat and Chennai and Coimbatore, manufacturing units, textile units. And the goal really was to sort of, bring in gender sensitivity so that people are able to see, workers are able to see, contractors are able to see how bringing in more women as you transition to low carbon technologies is good for everybody, is good for the ecosystem, for the entrepreneurs, for the factories, and for the people themselves. And I was conducting, and while I was prepared to work with the informal workforce, and I knew this sector is very unorganized, still when I went to these factories, the experience completely blew my mind, because these are people who are working in dingy, humid, hot, dark conditions, doing the smallest of jobs. And of course, the most menial jobs here go to women. And we were conducting this session, and this time it was only for women. And just 10 minutes into my session, one woman got up and said that, Didi, मैं जाऊं क्या? So I said, अभी तो session शुरू हुआ है, आप जाना क्यों चाहते हो? I'm assuming everybody here understands Hindi. She wanted to leave because she said that I have a target for 500 number of stitches that she had to do every day. And she said, I'm going to miss that target if I spend 1 hour here. And we speak very often in the gender world, when we speak about capacity building, we also talk about do no harm principles. So I paused the session and I called the supervisor and I said that, this is the challenge. And so they spoke amongst themselves and they came up with a solution. They said, no problem, go ahead. And after the session got over and I spoke to the supervisor and I said, how did you solve the problem? So they said that we have given her 1 more hour for the day to complete her target. So in the end, there is a philanthropy in the US, which is funding a think tank in India, which has hired me to conduct this session in Surat's textile mills. And the only person who's going to pay for it, truly, is that woman worker who's going to have to work 1 extra hour because she went through a gender equality training. So, the idea really is that we have to pull ourselves out and we have to also understand that, is it only a moral compass? And Jean, I come back to your point here, or is it also about power relations? Yeah, there is an asymmetry here. Sometimes it's an asymmetry of choice, because for if I want to know what's in it for me, am I also ready to say, what can I give away? And it's also the crux of the gender equality problem. It's the crux of the care economy challenge. What will I have to give away so that the other person is able to get more, so that we are equal genders? So, not everybody has the equal ability to choose ownership, and not everybody wants to choose ownership. Yeah. So these are also elements we need to think about. The other thing I'd like to say is on personal transformation. I think we lack empathy. Humans, perhaps, and Indians more so. And I say Indians with a pinch of salt here, and I don't want to become cynicist. But the thing is that we are so busy surviving in this country that the concept of empathy doesn't come at all to us naturally. I've also recently been working with an education setup which goes to government schools and teaches children not academics but life skills and other stuff, right? And there you see what the bottom of the barrel is, and we are all privileged people in this room. We send our kids to the best of schools, and then you see that these kids have nothing. They have nothing. They don't have physical education classes. They don't have shoes. They don't have slippers, proper sports shoes. Some of them come to play in our sessions in the, in their salwar kameez, the girls, because they would not be allowed if they don't come. So you are talking about, I mean, it's such an unequal world we live in. And I'm, as Caron said, it's sometimes I'm not able to distinguish between what I'm supposed to speak over and how I feel about it. We just have to start from the bottom. These conversations, if we really want to make a change, we have to build on empathy. We have to understand their viewpoint. Yeah. And these are people who can't spell inclusion, and I felt going to these schools and these are urban poor. I'm talking about Bombay, urban poor. I'm not talking about a rural area. So imagine that, municipal schools where nobody cares. And then we have some of our Bombay is supposed to be one of the richest municipal corporations in the country, right? So it is political will, but it is also about power. What are we willing to give away? That to me is the gap of our systems thinking.
Wow. As always, hard hitting as always. Thank you so much, Anupama. And it's incredible how you call it what you want, universe, God, greater power, whatever. But it's just unbelievable how things come together. And I was just looking at, at the risk of sounding, politically incorrect. I was actually on a website, humandevelopment.va, which is actually of the Vatican. Okay. And talks about building the civilization of love. Okay. Technology, war, and responsibility in the digital age. It's also saying that peace is the fundamental condition of the common good. And what does peace mean? One of the years of the Rise Peak World Summit, at the start of the welcome speech, in fact, I had asked this question: what is the opposite of unhappiness? And maybe I'll pose that question right now here itself. Yeah. What is, and anybody else can also answer it in the chat, what is the opposite of unhappiness?
That's easy, right?
Tell me.
Now
Tell
I'm
me.
thinking it's a trick question.
It is, absolutely. Well, the easy answer is obvious, or the obvious answer is to say it's happiness, right?
Happiness.
Well, it's not. And I'll tell you why too. The answer is something I've already given to you, and it's peace. Why? Because you cannot stay happy all the time. We are not wired that way, right? The world cannot be that way, that everything is perfect all the time in our lives. We are going to have problems in our lives. We are going to have difficult situations. What happens then? Are you going to be unhappy? No. You can be at peace with it. You can find a way to deal with it. You can find the resilience to deal with it, right? So therefore, the opposite of being unhappy is not being happy. Be happy as much as you can, of course, yes. But when you cannot be happy, can you still find it within you to make peace with it, to be able to deal with it, to be able to manage with it, to be able to be understanding of somebody else's conflict? Because you understand that all of us have to face that, right? So, I mean, as I said, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but I do want to say that one is, we have spoken about ecology a lot, and that is, of course, today's kind of focus, more or less. But I also want to bring in the AI piece. I think no conference can ever be complete without talking about AI. So I guess we better bring that in over here. And this website actually is talking about that human development in the age of AI, right? So a constantly growing connection between technology, power, and violence. And we're all seeing we are in the midst of war. How can you find? So what about peace in the situation of war? Can you find that? How do you understand peace, harmony, coexistence, being able to think of giving some more from my share to somebody else so that somebody else can deal with less that they already have? We talk about equity, and I think, Jean, you would say this better than anybody else, the difference between equity and equal, right? How do you bring that about? Right. So I'm going to leave it open. Anyone can come in now. I mean, in terms of where do we see ourselves in this whole multi-crisis, poly-crisis situation, which also adds to the complexity of our systems, right? How do we deal with that? Anyone? As I said.
So I'll try and take a shot at it, Karen.
Yeah.
I have a slightly kind of first principles perspective to that, and which is, I think absence of peace cannot be a precondition to achieving peace. There's no point in creating lab conditions, the sterile lab conditions, and saying that, hey, in these perfect test conditions, we are able to simulate happiness or peace or contentment, or whatever we want to call it, and say that let's scale this. To me, the test of what we are building is in this messy, chaotic world that we are doomed to live every single day. Because if it cannot survive in the chaotic, messy world, it cannot survive at all. So I fundamentally believe that we cannot disassociate ourselves and say, hey, there is a utopia somewhere within my mind or within some place on earth, and this is how it is going to work. Let's just go and replicate that at scale. To me, utopia is here, utopia is now, utopia is us. There is nothing better than us. I always say that there is no better starting point and a launch pad than where we are at this point in time. We have to build the right kind of forces, the balance of forces, both the restraining forces and the driving forces, and arrive at a solution which is kind of building some kind of a steady state. And that steady state could be different for you and me. It doesn't have to be the same for all of us. So we have to really look at it in the context, in situ kind of a situation, and really build it. So just to kind of get the conversation going, at least that's what I feel.
No, you're absolutely right, right? That is exactly what we're saying. Peace is not about the absence of conflict, right? It's not the absence of no problems and all of that, right? Peace is really being able to have the resilience to deal with whatever the situation is and make your peace with it, as we say, right? What do we mean by that? What does that line really mean? It's exactly that. So, yeah, thank you very much, Tatangal, for setting that kind of a tone to it. Great. Okay. We do have someone in the chat also, but in the meantime, anybody else wants to come in before we do that?
I want to respond to Anupama, and I wanted to also respond to what can we do about it, because there's so much out there, and so many of you are already doing things about it and are suggesting. But Anupama, we're talking about interconnectedness, okay? And power has an economic, political, cultural, social, moral dimension. So when she's making an option to make this lady work 1 hour more, yes, there's an economic dimension and an occupational, there's a hierarchy. She's the boss, okay? But there's also that moral dimension of exercising power over the woman. So they're not unconnected and disconnected. It's an exploitative relation. You're not looking at her as a human being, and that is a moral dimension to it. It's not ethical, it's not just, it's not. So that's the moral dimension of that part. But in terms of what are we doing about it, I like what Daisy was saying. Like, we have to start from, and all of us have said it in different ways, from where we are in locations that we are. I was intrigued by what Nina said about schools, as the General Secretary of Schools. I'm actually working, I advise the CCBI, the CBCI, those are Catholic bishops' conferences that, work on, they have an ecology chapter. And we are actually doing, and there are lots of groups doing this, but we are doing a piece on sustainable schools where we are looking at an educational, value-based, leadership-based component. Understanding ecology and climate and the environment. So the socio-economic dimensions, the value dimensions, and the leadership dimensions of school students. But also looking at particular pillars like water positivity, biodiversity, clean energy, zero waste to dump site. So those pillars for practical projects which will interact with the value, the technical, the understanding, the problem solving dimensions. And this will have a school policy. So you have an institutional reference point, so to speak, for a longer period of time, looking at teachers, administrators, school students, girls and boys, but also the maintenance workers in the schools, who are checking for water leakages and then showing the students, and the parents and teachers. So what is the potential if we are talking collaboration, if we are talking, using this platform, what is the potential for your, from where you are positioned, to look at these kinds of things?
So I'm so glad you said this word, Jean. So the way the roundtables, and that's why it's so organic, the way the roundtables at the Rise Speak World Summit is organized, and we're doing this for 13 years, and I'm amazed how every time, no matter what we do, it happens organically. So the thing is, we talk about challenges, we talk about capabilities, and then we talk about collaboration, and you did that absolutely on your own, right? So this is the section where we actually start talking on collaboration and what are the opportunities and what can we do. So one thing would be, one is like what Jean just did, an ask that she may have. But I would ask all of you to also think about that. And what is it that you could either do with others on the table, but also what is your larger ask, or wider ask of the world, because that's exactly what we want. Those who are going to view this, those who are here now and then on the platform and then on the YouTube once it goes, anyone who's viewing this, would say, oh wow, okay, this is something that they are doing and we'd love to partner. So please feel free to make your ask over here, and then at the end, I will also show, as I said, the tech platform that we are helping to make this enabled. But with that, I'll hand it to Nina to kind of respond to Jean and take it further. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Karen, and lovely to hear from you, Jean. Before I respond to Jean, I'd just like to say, when you asked the question of what is the opposite of unhappiness, I wanted to say being content. It's not about being happy all the time, but content with your decisions, content with your life, and just being, as a person, being okay with everything around you, no matter what might happen. Having said that, also the other side as to what what was said earlier, I always also feel that, and I'm going to quote Michael Jackson's song in this because his movies are really in the cinemas now, and I've been wanting to go see it. But The Man in the Mirror, which is really should be the story that we must, and he sang it, of course, years ago, but it still holds true now. It is very important for us to introspect and see where we can do things in order to self improve, because the moment we do that, there's a ripple effect. I do something, my children catch on, somebody else catches on, my office catches on, my community catches on, and so on and so forth. So if we can at least go with that, and have the right moral compass sort of guide us, that would be very valuable. Now, going back to Jean, and I would love to talk to you offline about this as well with respect to what you had just mentioned. I always have discussions with principals on a national level, with even the school directors on a national level. And one of the core things that we have found is how to sort of propagate or to bring about value education in students. When I was growing up, we had a class that was dedicated, we had one period that was dedicated to moral science. And now that is a class that has been taken over because the curriculum needs to be completed. And for various other reasons, that is just a class that is not being held. Once the youth are aligned with, and at this point, the youth just do not know what perhaps may be right or wrong. Parents are extremely busy because both parents are working. The child goes to the school, the pressure on having to complete the curriculum is, a lot, and the academic pressure builds in. As a result of that, the child does not probably have enough time to even sit down and think. We have made all these cookie cutter solutions for them. This is the box that they need to fit in. And so they're not able to think out of the box. Value education is huge on our agenda as well. That's the reason why our programs have some sort of a value-based education attached to it, so that we can at least bring that out into the foray. But perhaps at some point of time, I'd love to talk to you. We in fact have a USO club wherein we align various values to other certain instances, such as, tree plantation, giving back to the society, helping, having a day when there's a no plastic day and things of that nature, so that in our own small ways, we are trying to make that impact. And we are hoping that it not just seeps or stays with the students, but grows into their community as well. So, but would love to talk to you offline and connect with you to tell you exactly.
And I think one more person both of you should be talking to is Vishwa Shah, who works with reimagining education and doing some phenomenal work. And he's, of course, posted some stuff on that the Daisy has responded. But yeah, we are running out of time. So I do want to do some last bit of, like I said, collaboration opportunities. Maybe I will actually cover what we are doing with the Pico World Tech platform, so that, it is available to all of us to take forward, because we don't want, the conversation is not to end here. One of the biggest problems with most summits is that the conversation ends at that point and then everybody goes back to doing what they are doing, right? The second part that what Ashish kind of alluded to is that the voice in the room, or even Anupama said, this is an echo chamber. Well, let me tell you, we are going to be doing our damnest. Okay, and sorry for that over there, but we really want to be trying to make sure that this goes beyond. And one of the ways we're doing this is we are having offline sessions because there is a technology divide, whether we like it or not. So we have community sessions going on this year. All the physical sessions are actually community sessions. So they will be so that they are also involved in some way. And when we put those videos up and we put those photos as a part of the whole summit, they feel so good and proud that they are part of it. It's not that they are separate. So you have to find ways. As I said, you cannot be perfect. You cannot solve everything, but whatever little bit you can do that little bit, because that's how we'll reach the tipping point. The tipping point never happens through one major push that can happen at one time, but it happens when you keep adding, and that's why it's called a tipping point in the first place, right? Otherwise, all that we would need is push, but that doesn't happen. So yeah, I mean, it is the smaller thing. So I'm going to very quickly show. As I said, what we are doing in the Pico world so that we get a sense of that. I'm so sorry with this all. Oh, okay. I thought it was open already. So if you can see over here, I hope all of you have taken the persona test. It's just a 1-minute test. But honestly, this is what we meant going beyond your legal identity, right? Understanding yourself in a collective setting so that you know who you are and what are you likely to do when you're in a collective. Not what you are as an individual, but as a collective. The second is the passport, right? We tend to be everywhere. I think Daisy said, right? We're in so many WhatsApp groups. Why? Because we just feel, oh, it's kind of relevant to me. Let me be a part of it. No. If you use the 3C passport, it'll force you to be very, very specific about what really matters to you. And I think that's what we are trying to make sure, that people are focused on what matters, because if it matters to you, you will take action, right? And so this is what helps you to do it. If at all by chance what you're concerned about is not covered, there is a custom cause. Please just add that, and we will try to keep adding it to our list of issues, right? Then you have the Go to Exchange, which is about that one-time good deed post that I mentioned. If you have a need, put it here. If you have something to offer, put it here. And then we are going to, right now, of course, we'll do it manually doing the matchmaking, but hopefully over a period of time, it'll go into an AI algorithm. The whole thing is AI driven, but we've tried to keep some checks and control to make sure, because we are in beta version, as I said. So be little kind to us, be with us as we kind of build this together. And, hopefully we are going to make this really work. So this will help those to be able to say, I can offer this. And this is not just from a social angle. It can be from a workplace perspective. It can be from a community perspective. It can be from a nature perspective. Anything you have to offer or anything you want to do, that's what it's called Go to. Give opportunity, take opportunity, right? And you do that. So that's the one-off. And once you start exchanging and knowing more, maybe you can start creating a community. Now, the most important thing about this is you do not have to replicate your WhatsApp groups or your online communities over here. You just put a link to it over here, and people who discover you over here, or the people who want to get to know you better, will join you wherever you are. That's the beauty. We are not duplicating. We are not asking you to reinvent the wheel and start again new conversations. No forums here, no feed here, no nothing. It's a simple registry. It's a simple repository. That's the other challenge with WhatsApp, right? We die under all those messages. So this becomes a repository of important events that have taken place in the past, important documents you might want to put. So very easily, anybody joining your WhatsApp group very quickly can jump and get up to speed. Of course, it can be private. It can be open to only a set of people. You can definitely manage those kind of settings that will make it work for you. And we've already put in place quite a few. PicoNets have already started during this itself. So we are really happy about it. And last but not the least, once you start working with people, perhaps you might have a project you want to do together. And that's where the action takes place, in the Pico Circle. Of course, you can also start with the Pico Circle on your own. So you don't have to wait for a PicoNet to happen. If you already have a live project that you're looking for collaborators, just put that over here, and you can put out a call saying, I am looking for this kind of support. I am looking for these kind of resources. I am looking for this kind of a solution. I am looking for more of these kind of community members or networks where I believe my solution will make help. So this is how we have created the whole Pico world. And I'm going to stop here very quickly. This is how we've created the Pico World Tech Platform, understanding what we've been doing for the last 17 years. connecting people. Somebody once jokingly told me, if Nokia had not already taken that tagline, it would belong to you. Okay. Because that's what we do constantly, right? People are constantly calling and telling us, can you help me to connect with so and so person? Can you help me to find this? So I think that's one big thing. Second is, of course, the WhatsApp group experience. That's the challenge we all face. So that was the other big, what you call it, kind of insight that we realized. And third is, like I said, we don't want to replicate anything at all. We really want to build as many connections to reach that tipping point. And that tipping point will only be reached when we have so many pico circles developed, small, micro focus. It can be just, well, I wouldn't say your household, but definitely your society, definitely your cul-de-sac, right? Any small neighborhood, bring them together. The more we bring these together, you'll be able to then kind of, we hope to reach that tipping point to really create change on the ground. So inviting all of you here, let's go on this ecosystem. Let's do more about it. And if there is any last words, either comments on the Pico World or anything on the topic itself, I'd love to just quickly get that from you all before we start looking at closing. Yeah. So yeah, because the ask was for mechanism. So that's why I had to share the mechanism in place. Yeah. But thank you so much. That's really nice. Any closing thoughts, Anupama, Daisy, Ashish especially?
Well, I would just want to say that not like Anupama said that, not everybody wants to own something. They are not in a position to own it. Look at the bottom of the barrel and things are not so empowering for them. I want to really invite people to start. Don't look at anything else. My invitation to people is just look at you. Are you empowered? Do you feel empowered enough to make the smallest contribution? For example, in my society, when the general assembly, the society meeting happens, I keep asking them, are we doing something about the water harvesting system or not? Because, we always complain about groundwater, but how many water harvesting systems are we making sure that they get installed? There is government subsidy, there is a whole system around it. But at a community level, what ownership are we taking? So for me, asking them every time that, we should have this is a contribution I'm making. Now, if you can break it down to that simple level and say that, what is it that can be done and how can I make sure, push the right buttons somewhere? Because ultimately, somebody in authority needs to be involved because there is money involved in it, because there are permissions involved in it. So I can't do it all on my own. The political will, whether it is of a RWA or a whole city administration or a whole country administration, somewhere that authority, the will of that authority is required. So how do you push the right levers for the authority to respond to your ask is where I think all of us can work. There are no excuses that we can give.
Absolutely. Thanks, Daisy. That's so true. And that's the bare minimum, right? So thank you for pointing that up and great invitation. Yes, Jean, you wanted to say something, please. You're on mute.
I said, I think I put my hand down. It was an old hand that was.
Okay. Fair enough. No problem. So, Ashish, Anupama, any last words?
Sorry, Anupama, go ahead.
After you.
Well, actually, what you said last time was so hard hitting, right? In that example, so specific example of the 1 hour being added. Let me just take from that itself. I think we need to be more comfortable back in these rooms, these sort of echo chambers, talking about the economic value chain side of things. It's just something we're constantly trying to keep that away from these conversations. And we have to play in that space. We can't dissociate from it. I'll throw a number that some of you may or may not know, but it's staggering. 200 trillion is assets under management. Nobody counts it exactly, but that's the notional value running. Assets under management in the globe. 200 trillion. 70 to 80 trillion of that is going to transfer to the next generation. Wealth that has been created in the next 15-20 years. A large part of that is going to go to women, young women who are more attuned in this space. And we talked about gender a bit. And we need to start tapping into that side of things. We need to not only talk from a philanthropic, or value is going to be related to financial, social, and environmental. I think we tend to be very focused on the social and environmental, and not the and that's why we remain in some way marginal. And I think that's just both my give and my take is, let's make sure when we are talking about speed and scale of change and diversity, we also talk about the three PPs, profit, planet, people. All three need to go hand in hand.
I'm so glad you said that, because yesterday, the topic which we spoke about, future ready or future blind, is really about that. Okay, how do you bring social and economic, social and environmental factor into economy first thinking? Okay, so that's exactly the subject which we covered yesterday. And also one thing which I would want to add is, when I started iDobro 17 years ago, wow, right? 17 years ago. And I was looking for a term to say what kind of impact I want to make, and I realized we only would say either social or environmental. And I'm like, no, because economics is a part of our life. And I come from a corporate. In fact, I jokingly say that I moved from gems to germ, because my last corporate job was with diamonds, right? So from gems to germs, right? And I was like, and I come from that world, and I'm like, how do you even start saying that it's two different worlds? And so and when I looked for that word, the only word that came closest was the triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line is not really about value creation. It's about still economics. Let's be very clear about that, right? It's an economic first kind of an approach. And that's where I realized that there is no language, there is no vision. And we've done both of that. I mean, we worked on both of that. And the word that I came up with, and I'd love to see if y'all can handle that, is socio-environnomic. We say social, we say economic, we say socio-economic. Why don't we have a word like socio-environnomic? And that's the word I then. So try it, because some people tell me it's a tongue twister, but I know many people who have actually been able to just roll it off their tongue. And we have far more complex words that we've been able to deal with. So why not this word? We really do need a word like this. And we actually launched a whole toolkit around this last year at the Rise Peak World Summit itself. So you're absolutely right, Ashish. We do need the right language. We don't even have that, right? And economics cannot be by itself, but neither can social and environmental be by itself. And that's why we have the whole green transition move to just transition, just because of that. Because when we spoke of green transition, people in the environmental space would say, I have nothing to do with social. Excuse me? And that's why just transition came about, because very soon we realized that green transition by itself is not working. And so, yeah, absolutely agree with you. And I couldn't have asked for a better statement to help me also share what we have done and how we are kind of working on that aspect as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and to take it further, Ashish, what you said is absolutely right. And I know that many international development bodies, like UN and ADB and World Bank and all of those, they are bringing in more and more. For example, investing with a gender lens and those the focus on those domains. You folks in Impact now have a concept of blended finance, which is going to make a lot of difference. So I think one of the things we also need to take away from this discussion is how do we make this conversation more monetary? And again, Karen, that goes back to your point about what's in it for me. So as a person who's looking at profit, we'll have to address that one way or another. We will not be able to move away from the WIFM. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I guess the SDGs say, planet, profit, and peace, right? At the end of the day, they all are interlinked. We don't have a choice. We have to work, and we need money. There is no doubt. Capital is a requirement. I mean, as Daisy said, but capital that then gets linked to power dynamics is the problem, right? How do we become custodians and stewards of resources that we have? And also, one of the topics that we did go through in the Beyond series itself was beyond financial capital, human, social, natural, and physical capital. We have to realize there is other forms of capital as well. Because if we are stuck on financial capital, then neither will we be able to get other forms of capital up and going, nor will they get their right. So, I mean, we are running out of time and we have to close. But, I just want to thank each one of you for the brilliant conversation I think we've had just now. So many different kind of diverse views, and at the same time so much of us saying the same thing in different ways, and that is required because people think differently, people absorb differently, people accept differently, and when you have different perspectives, I think that just brings more people closer to what should be the ultimate goal, which is a single goal. We all want a better world and a greener planet for all of us. I think that's a no-brainer. So thank you all very much. Truly appreciate the time here. And I just want to put one last plug. Don't forget, today is the final day. So we have the closing plenary today at 6 p.m. IST, where we also have the RISE Awards, and we will be announcing our RISE awardees for this year. Again, amazing people who have done incredible work. And I would truly, truly invite all of you to please be a part of it. It's also a time when we get our partners and experts to share their and participants actually to share, very democratic. Please come in and share your thoughts and views about the whole summit and what have you taken away and what are you going to do further, because as we always keep saying, we are working for outcomes and follow up and not just for an event and a feel good situation. So do join us, and thank you very much once again. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Karan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks, Karan.
Yeah.